To order for March 19th, 2019. First item is roll call.
Kuhn.
Here.
Burke.
Present.
Teal.
Here.
West.
Present.
Olson. Ramsey.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Richard is absent.
And next item is comments from citizens present, and we have John Hellman.
Or not.
Hepner.
I couldn't read it, sorry. I don't see
Okay.
a P.
If you don't mind, I guess I would.
Would you come to the podium and state your address?
John Hepner, 1818 Parmenter Street, representing T Wall Enterprises. I guess I would prefer to present during item 1 on the planning agenda or the conceptual for Conservancy Bend residences. That's what I had filled the form out.
Okay. If we have questions, we can
Very good.
call on you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the consent agenda, and it's quite long.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Move adjournment.
There's not as much left. Okay, Airport Management Plan Advisory Committee appointments. This is old business.
I have a question for the city administrator. Is there a mandatory limit or mandatory 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, mandatory 8 on that committee?
Mark's the city administrator for this one.
Alder Teal, there is not. This is a committee that is advisory to the Airport Commission. It is not defined by ordinance. It was created by the council, I think, in February. And if the council wished to add members to the body, I don't see why it couldn't.
I've got another question, Mark. The mayor gave us this sheet of saying it listed qualifications for people. And I've got concern about someone opposed to the airport because I frankly think that I'm concerned that people in the towns are going to be opposed, and then we've got another member that I know is opposed. And I'm concerned about stacking this commission or committee.
What I can give you as background is that the Airport Commission, with my contribution as staff comments, recommended various positions to serve on the advisory committee. And so having a member of the town of Springfield, or a member from the town of Springfield and having a member from the town of Middleton was something the Airport Commission thought was a good idea.
That I don't have a problem
Right.
with. Another person is.
I also, and the commission also endorsed the idea of specifically identifying someone who is considered a critic of the airport, to have that role on the commission as well, on the committee as well. I presume that is one of the people that you're referring to, Mr. Bartholomew, I presume. And then the other members that are identified, a representative of the business community, someone who specifically is a pilot. I believe there was an airport commission representative. Some of these people have overlapping roles. You know, there can be a pilot. In fact, there's a couple pilots that are, in fact, I think there's at least 3 pilots identified. No, 4 actually, on the advisory committee. And we also have others in the community who are interested on the to serve, but maybe hadn't been engaged in the process to date. You got an email, I think, from Capital Flight, Matt Holfeld, who's here tonight, who's offered his services. So to answer the previous question, to elaborate on that, is you know, this is meant to be an advisory committee to help guide the master planning process for the airport that's underway currently, going to go on for basically through the end of the year.
Will these meetings be public?
Yes.
Will there be a chance for public comment?
I don't see why not. I think all of our city committees that are, except for maybe L&O or Finance, but you welcome public comment, I think, at most of our committees. And
Yeah,
I'm
we take
obviously
public
not the
comment at
chairperson, so
L&O.
I don't see why that couldn't be permissible.
Okay,
Susan?
yes.
I recommended to the mayor, Robert Bartholomew,
You did.
because in my time working with Mark on airport commission matters, he's the one person I could think of who's been a constant skeptic and complainant about the airport. I think he lives in Middleton Hills.
Yes.
Howard, I can't think of anybody else who's been more of a skeptic. Maybe you can, but to me, that was the name that came to mind, and I do believe it's better to have somebody who's a skeptic as part of the process. So I suggested that to the mayor, and he's interviewed him as well.
I just want to be sure it's balanced and not overwhelmingly
Yeah.
against
Well,
the appropriate expansion for the airport that we need.
And it could be a good, healthy discussion, from a variety of standpoints. I think we have to remember, too, that it's an advisory committee to an advisory committee. So we're just getting an extra layer of citizen interaction on the airport.
Anything that the advisory committee would come with would go before the airport commission. So
Right.
they're not
Yeah,
the-
that I'm
they're
not
the
worried
de-
about.
they're
I
not the
don't,
decision-making body.
I see this is where they're doing planning and expressing vision and so on, similar to the
I understand that.
our
But I think we need,
municipal building.
I
So I want
think
to
a
be
broad
sure,
range of people.
okay, that we've got a really good broad range there.
Balance, yeah.
So I'd ask a question about the number, right? You could conceivably just have 4 ties all the way for every decision point that has to be made. Might it not be better to limit it to 7? Or
Have 9.
Mm-hmm.
9 becomes cumbersome? But
A lot of times they send it forward to the airport committee without a binding vote, just.
Well, they're advisory and other votes are gonna be binding.
Right.
It is a temporary committee, so from that standpoint, I wouldn't see any harm in there being 9 and adding an additional one.
I wouldn't mind 9. I could see 9 with someone who actually uses some of a business in town that actually uses the services provided at the airport. That's what I see as missing.
Do we have a motion on this yet?
No,
I'm going to move approval with the following change, that we add a 9th individual to that listing, and that is Matt Holfeld, who is one of the hangar owners out on the airport. I'm not so much concerned about not coming up with a 4-4 tie
yeah.
as I am making sure everybody has a baseball bat when they sit down and start talking about some of these things. This is those kinds of commissions that is looking at the list of characters on here. I don't see where there's gonna be anything other than good, solid discussion on the issues that are presented to them. So I'd like to add a 9th member, and that'd be Matt Holfeld.
Howard, both
second
Matt and Jade Hofelt applied.
Oh, I want just one of them on there. One of them's enough.
And I'll second that motion.
so I think part of the
Jade
issue,
seems to be very qualified also.
part of the issue is
Somebody
don't,
has to stay home and take care of the new young'un.
Ooh.
Howard,
May I ask a question?
yes.
We need a legal opinion here. Comes from the mayor? Can we just appoint somebody at the council level, or is this something that the mayor has to do?
The appointment authority is vested in the mayor, and approving authority is vested in the council. So I think it's certainly appropriate to, identify the need for a ninth member, but I think the decision has to be the mayor's to appoint someone subject to your confirmation.
So are you gonna rephrase your motion to approve the 8 that are here with a strong recommendation to the mayor to appoint the 9th for Mr. Hofeld?
If that'll help.
Emily?
I just wanted to clarify, are there any other hangar owners on the list? I'm guessing it's a no.
Are there any other hangar
And-
owners on there?
Yeah, since he said there was 4 pilots, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
They're hangar owners, but there's a difference in being a hangar owner and serving a business and
Okay.
developing a business of clients throughout the community.
And this person fills that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a revised motion of approve the committee, the 8 members, with a strong suggestion for a 9th,
Named 9th.
named 9th. And that will have to come back for our approval.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The committee appointments are approved. Next item is amended and restated stormwater management system maintenance agreement with the Masters Residences LLC. That was before Plan Commission? Or was it?
Move approval?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Robert?
On page 62, and I guess this is probably most directed at city council, or sorry, city attorney, counsel for us. Under swales, Larry, are you looking at the same area?
Yeah.
Great. Under swales, it says, in addition to semi-annual inspection, also inspect swales after rainfall events of 1.5 inches or greater for 2 years following installation. Everything else in here, I believe, is kind of in perpetuity, goes on forever. Is there any reason why we would only inspect the swales for 2 years? And maybe that's not you. Maybe this is some city staff would know more about this.
Well, I'm guessing this was drafted by Gary Huth of the city, of the assistant city engineer. Drafts, as far as I know, most, if not all, of these agreements wouldn't be coming forward without staff's approval. My somewhat educated guess about this is that the idea is that a swale, until it's been properly compacted, could not survive significant rainfalls. And once it's been there for 2 years with a proper ground cover, the likelihood is that is high that it isn't going to fail in the future after that. That'd be my guess, but I'm trying to read Gary's mind as I say this. But I've seen things like this before. It is, I think, common to recognize that the greatest stress on a stormwater management system is in the first year or two. Once it's mature, it's probably gonna hold up pretty well for years and years to come. And of course, it's still the obligation of these property owners to fix anything that fails on their dime.
I'll ask the city engineer who's present. Does that at least sound right, or do you have firsthand knowledge of this?
Please say yes.
To the second question, no, but to the first question, that would have been my first thought too, is that for a dry-bottomed stormwater conveyance, once it's vegetated, it should be fine.
Okay. Then thank you both. If I can keep the floor for just a moment, I would ask that that bullet point just be moved down to the bottom unless the city attorney doesn't think it makes any sense to do so, only because when reading a list of things, if the very first thing says only for 2 years, a lot of times the rest of the list kind of gets read with that limitation put in. If the bullet point order doesn't make a lot of difference, I'd put that at the bottom of the list. And then under wet detention ponds just below, there's a missing word. It's very minor, but let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth bullet point down that starts, if there is 2 feet of accumulated sediment, blah, blah, blah.
After the comma.
After the comma, it should be pond or the pond shall be dredged. Yeah. Those are my only comments or recommendations for changes to this agreement.
That's fine with me.
That sounds easy. Thanks.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agreement was passed. Renewable Energy Rider Services Agreement for 500 kilowatt subscription to Middleton Municipal Airport Solar Project.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agreement's approved. Budget. Authorization to purchase 2 replacement ambulances, including authorizing the use of 2018 capital carryover funds for ambulance replacement.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Discussion?
I have a question. What happens to the old ambulances?
So the whole fleet that we have consists of 3 ambulances right now. One's a reserve. So right now our reserve is a 1998, believe it or not. So that'll go out, and then one of our 2 current ambulances will likely be liquidated, but they only have a value probably of about $6,000 at the most. So, so we'll maintain a fleet of 3 of them. So one of our current ones will remain in a reserve.
And that fund, that just goes into the fund for the next.
Sure, yeah, and again, it all depends upon what the market for them is. Right now, those 2009 ambulances, that particular engine that's in there is a very problematic engine, and that's why it's got little to no value. So we'll see, where it goes and what we can get.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Robert?
Just a question. I know it was discussed a bit in the finance committee prior to this. Are we going to have a vehicle reserve going forward of closer to $70,000 every year set aside for?
That's certainly my intent from a budgeting perspective.
Because obviously we were caught with not enough money saved up for these 2 ambulances, and we want to make sure that 8 to 10 years from now, which is the numbers I saw in here, we're a lot closer or over budgeted for I don't know if that's the right term, overfunded, or at least adequately funded to pay for the next
So I
sessions.
will count on your support the next budget cycle for this.
Yeah. It's up to
And
us.
Sounds good to me.
I can just add that in the 2019 budget, the targeted amount is at 60,000, but that's something that we've discussed. We may want to increase further based on where the prices came in on this round.
As I read this, the numbers added up to basically being only like a 1% estimated annual, I don't know what the right amount. It basically, 10 years ago, they said, well, we should increase it by this amount. When you look back over 10 years, it was only like a 1% increase in how much we set aside. $60,000 sounds like it might be a similarly low increase. So again, I think we need to go higher.
So I will just give you a little perspective on this. I think $48K a year was more of a wag than anything else. And there really wasn't an intent to put an inflation rider in there. I think the thought was that we would just kind of capture the what we thought the capital cost would be at the current value or the present value when we started. So we didn't really put a whole lot of thought into this, other than we knew that we needed to start essentially putting money away for this expenditure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, authorization's approved. Contracts, work order with Vanderwall and Associates for TIF District 3, Amendment Number 10.
Move approval is recommended by Finance.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the contract's approved. Miscellaneous, 5-year street improvement plan.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Street improvement plans approved. Ordinances first reading, final action may be taken upon approval of motion to suspend rules under section 1.07 Middleton General Ordinances. An ordinance relating to exemptions for certain food sales from mobile food establishment and direct sellers licenses.
Move approvals and suspend the rules.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is approved. Next item is ordinance relating to assumption of commercial plan review.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That ordinance is approved. Planning zoning, concept review of Conservancy Bend Residences LLC, Parmenter Clark Street, 2413 and 2421 Parmenter Street, and set a public hearing.
There's not a need to set a public hearing. That was inadvertently carried over from the Plan Commission.
Okay. Just approval of the concept review. Discussion?
We have a motion.
No.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion?
Everybody here? Can I ask a question? At the Plan Commission meeting, we went over your concept, but one question we didn't ask is in your concept, is there still the deed restrictions for the 6 townhouses? 15-year deed restrictions?
So in speaking with staff further on that, Abby and Eileen, they've seemed to indicate that they would prefer that we don't deed restrict those. We haven't come to a conclusion on that item yet. I know they're speaking with our attorney as well, but it seems that staff would prefer that we do not deed restrict the townhomes.
What is the deed restriction for?
Well, my understanding is that the deed restriction would have kept 6 of the townhomes at the 80% or affordable purchase limit, but seeing as it seems we're not within that WIDA limit, the deed restriction didn't seem applicable. And further, for refinancing purposes, life insurance companies and the other lenders who will typically do your permanent financing really dislike deed restrictions. And if I could speak further on the workforce housing item, we don't want it to seem like we are pulling like a bait and switch. In our calculations, given the tables that we used from WIDA's 2019 information, those tables show an 80% limit both for the rental and for the purchase of a home or a townhome. but it did not indicate in those tables that utilities, insurance, property taxes, things like that also need to be included. And we, putting our best foot forward and not being a low-income developer, there is a significant amount of research further that I had to do to actually find that information. So Kurt is right, but we didn't want it to seem like we intentionally went over those prices.
Okay, so can we backtrack for a second then? If, are you still planning to have 6 units at a more reasonable cost? Or are they now gone up to the cost of the other, what, 16 or other 12 or however many?
So as of right now, yes, we still are. Those are per the RFP. We have 6 units at $365,000. Thanks.
Any comments, other comments, discussion? Emily, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I can hear both sides. I'm reflecting because my district had the Amherst builds, and there has been comments from constituents made that people who were fortunate enough to buy at Amherst can then sell at full price, and they just didn't have a chance to buy at that time. And that's the luck of the draw. But it sounds like deed restriction doesn't work on the open market if you can't get insurance and things like that. So I think that's something to consider next time we have a build.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one. Okay. The concept review is approved. Next is concept review request for a tax increment finance District 5 assistance Conservancy Bend LLC Parmenter Clark Street Properties.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Discussion? I will say I am very disappointed that we don't have the workforce housing that some of us at least felt was a really big portion of this project. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. So the concept review for TIF financing was approved. Resolutions 2019-14 to support a Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation Community Development Investment Grant application for the Addison Development 6814, 6818, 6824 University Avenue.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Discussion? None. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we voted, the resolution's approved. And Resolution 2019-15, University Avenue, Cayuga Park Reconstruction, Agreement with County for Reconstruction and Jurisdictional Transfer.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Discussion? Robert?
Just a missing word again.
Okay.
On the second page of the resolution, the very end, be it further resolved, third line down, Cayuga Street to 450 feet. The word is missing is feet. 450 feet west of Park Street. If we can add that word in, I would appreciate it.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The reconstruction agreement is approved. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.